As you learn about the narcissistic pattern, it's also wise to reflect on the much healthier alternatives. Now, below you're going to find a link to my new extensive course called Ready, Set, Connect. It addresses both the mindset and the skills involved in gratifying relationships, and I hope you'll find it to be quite therapeutic. Through the years in my counseling office, there was one phrase that I heard fairly often that I would never let anybody get away with. And that simple phrase was, "We just don't communicate." Now, when you think about it, that statement is false because there's no such thing as no communication. There are so many different ways that we can communicate with each other beyond just words. By the way, I could go 2 weeks and not say a word to you, but boy, does that communicate something. People are constantly picking up on nonverbal or behavioral cues from you and me as they try to figure out, are you a safe person or not? Are you somebody that treats me as an equal or not? And I want to go through multiple cues that narcissists can send you that would be of the nonverbal or behavioral variety that could let you know what you're on to. See, let's keep in mind narcissists have a high need for control and entitlement, a lack of empathy, and it comes through in many small kinds of ways. In other words, there are times when you pick up on these cues and you're wondering, am I just making this up, or is this person being really condescending toward me? And usually the answer is no, you're not making it up. For example, let's take a look at what I'm talking about. I want you to think about some of the facial features that you can watch for as you engage with a narcissist. For example, one really easy one is, have you ever been around somebody that just has a real difficulty making eye contact with you? They just don't look at you straight in the face. It's as though they're saying, you're just not significant enough. Sometimes as you're talking, they may be looking beyond you to see if there's any kind of better alternative out there than just you. Sometimes you can engage with somebody and instead of having that no contact, they can give you a hard glare and you just feel like they're staring holes right through you. And there's almost a mean element that seems to be coming through in their facial features. The implication there is they have a need for dominance. There's a lack of humor. There's a lack of sensitivity toward you. Other times, and I know many of you have had this experience, some individuals can have this really ogling, seductive way of looking at you. I've had people talk about how they're around certain people and feel like they're trying to undress them with their eyes. And by the way, that seductiveness can be both male or female. I think women complain about that more than men do, simply because men can be so visually stimulated, but to the extent that where they give the communication that says, I see you as an object of desire, period. Now, there's another interesting element with respect to the eyes. Sometimes when a person is telling lies, they'll have these little micro closures of the eye. As an example, there was a woman who was telling me about how she felt that her husband was unfaithful. And he would sit in my office and he would say, no, I'd never be unfaithful to you. And he'd do these little micro closures of the eye. Later on, she came back and told me that there was some video with their security cameras at home that actually showed him coming into the door with another woman. Well, that was kind of the proof that she needed. But here he was saying, no, that's not something I would do. And when they close their eyes like that, it's their way of saying, I don't want to look at you while I'm lying at you. Other times that little micro eye closure can just imply a lack of sincerity. So you can see that we have those kinds of elements. Or there are times, going back to facial features, when a person can over smile. You ever notice somebody that just, it's like, whether you're talking to them about your day at work, or you're talking about some family issues or difficulties and all, they just sit there and just smile up a storm. And it's like you're working way too hard. And the over smiler is somebody that so wants to be admired and wants to be seen as likable that it's like that overwhelms their capacity to be empathetic towards you. Or on the other extreme, you can have people that'll have a real stiff way of looking at you. They don't move their head. There's just no discernible sense of care or concern on their face. And the expressionless kind of a person is basically saying, I have zero interest in who you are and knowing you at the heart. Sometimes the facial feature can just involve a smirk. And that implies condescension. Or it may be that they'll give you an eye roll or the head wag, or they may just simply walk away. So each one of those little gestures can imply you don't matter to me. Or how about the handshake? You know, when you have a straight-on handshake, that implies that there's a sense of congeniality and equality. But what about the person that does the palm down handshake? Typically, that's a power move. It's their way of saying, I'm in charge. Sometimes if they do a palm up handshake, it can be their way of saying, I'm already asking you to give me your trust, and you owe that to me. So even that can have its connotation. Of course, then you have the bone cruncher handshake, and that's obviously dominance, and it's a lack of empathy. They don't even notice how they may make your hand hurt when you walk away. And then, of course, you have the infamous limp fish handshake, which is their way of saying, I'm completely disinterested in you. Or let's take a look at some other kinds of things. There are times when people can have clothing that implies a neediness on their part. And when I say that, there are times, for example, people can have really outlandish ways of clothing, wearing their clothes. Now, it's okay to be colorful and all, of course, in the way that you dress. I mean, some people look good in red. But there are times when people can be so overboard, they're just doing the look at me, with their loud dress and their clothing and the way they present themselves. And these are individuals who are craving adoration and admiration. Of course, you can go to the opposite extreme, the person who's constantly sloppy to the extent that it's inappropriate. It's their passive-aggressive way of saying, I don't care and nobody matters in my world anyway. Or another micro indicator is the kind of car people drive. I've known people who they insist on having the more expensive vehicle than they're able to afford, but it's like, no, this is a status kind of thing, and I've got to have status. And there are actually studies that show that people who buy the exotic sports car have a much higher propensity towards narcissism. Or how about in social situations? If you watch how individuals treat service people, wait staff and people behind the counter, there's some that are just downright rude and dismissive. It's kind of like, excuse me, do you understand? You're not my equal. And they can treat them with disdain and be quite rude in the way that they engage with them. Or there can be times when people in general, in the way that they engage in a social, more social kind of setting, they can be incongruous in the way that they manage their emotions. For example, let's suppose that you're saying something that has a sad connotation to it. You're talking about a difficult situation, and they can just be sitting there just smiling like crazy. Or it may be that you're talking about a very moving and touching, tender kind of moment, and they just don't seem to engage or interact well with all. Of course, that involves a lack of empathy. Sometimes in social conversations, they can just run away with the discussion. You're talking about something that's important to you, and they just want to completely take the subject into something that's more suitable to what they want to talk about. They can interrupt constantly. They can talk over you. They may raise their voice whenever they're trying to express opinions and you don't go along with it. They'll change the subject. Sometimes they give a lot of unsolicited advice. It's like, let me tell you. It's like, I don't need you to tell me. But those can all be indicators of dominance and self-absorption. Sometimes they can be very tense in the way that they respond to you and easily annoyed and agitated. All of that communicates something. There are times when you may be engaging with that person and they're constantly checking their cell phone or other devices like that. Sometimes they can be chronically tardy and then just kind of laugh it off as they try to explain it. I got stuck by a train, and they just joke about it. But it's like they're that way constantly, or it may be that they're constantly tardy and they just don't say anything at all because they don't care about what it does to you. Do you get an idea of what I'm talking about? Now, I could add a whole lot more, but the general notion is we go back to that statement, there's no such thing as no communication. And when you have a strong narcissistic bent, it indicates that your character is so defined by your need for dominance, your need for control, your insensitivity towards others, your sense of entitlement, and your defensiveness, all of that. And it's going to pop up in all these little bitty ways. I've had so many people, when they pick up on these small cues and they'll speak with me privately, it's like, I don't want to seem picky, but am I just being too sensitive about these things? Or am I just making this up? Am I making too big of a deal about it? And typically my response is, no, you're not. Now, you take one or two of these kinds of things and you can try to build an argument around just a couple of little small episodes, and that's not going to go too far. But typically, the people that have that strong narcissistic bent are going to have a whole host of these nonverbal and behavioral cues that imply it's all about me, I don't really care about you. So when you do find yourself wondering what's going on over there, I'm not feeling comfortable. Am I just being too picky in the way that I'm reading this? My response to that is listen to what your gut is telling you, because all of these little small indicators added up together communicates a lot. Now, I hope that videos such as this can give you some good things to think about and help you understand what you're dealing with this pattern that we call narcissism. If you've not already done so, I would encourage you to hit that subscribe button and we'll keep more videos coming toward you. I know sometimes when you are dealing with these kind of things, it could be that you would like to have somebody to help you sift it out in a therapeutic way. I'm so pleased that I have a sponsor that can help you with online therapy, which is very popular right now, the BetterHelp people. There's a link below and you can go to that and you can select from a whole team of licensed professional therapists. And if that's a need, I would strongly encourage you to look into that. Also, I have some online courses, and they're meant to be a therapeutic, walking you through all sorts of processes. Each course has multiple videos with written material with each one, questions that are guided to help you sift things through. We have my new one, Ready, Set, Connect. It's all about establishing healthy ingredients in relationships. This is me about establishing boundaries, free to be, finding yourself despite the controllers, and they're meant to be a therapeutic process. It takes a lot of work. I put a lot of work into them, but it could take you to a good place, I would hope. And then in addition, we have my books and other resources. So when you see these micro indicators, watch and see how many of them tend to line up along with all of the other elements of narcissism that I've spoken with you about on other other videos, and it'll give you a much clearer depiction of what you're dealing with. And I'm hoping that as you see it, it can again remind you that says somebody in this equation needs to be healthy and communicate in the right kind of way down to the micro levels, and that somebody's going to be me. I stand for dignity, respect, and civility. That's what we do here on Team Healthy.